Hi, everybody. This is Gail. Welcome to this week's program on overcoming the obstacles. You're going to be really excited about this one. It's Autumn Jackson, and she is a woman small business owner in a male dominated field of auto detailing. So, the whole automotive industry, if you've ever taken your car, it didn't take long to figure out that most of the people working in the industry are men. And so, here we have Autumn who's bucking that trend. But before we get started, I do want to invite you to give me a like on this video, share it out with your friends on social media. Speaking of which, my links are down below. So if you want to follow me there, that would be great. And definitely, if you have not already done so, make sure that you subscribe and hit that little bell. That way, you can get notifications on all the videos and live streams that we do on this channel. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over, and we have Autumn here. And Autumn, tell us about yourself and about your business.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being on the show.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Like I had just said in the other stream we did,
and the other stream was on the other channel, folks.
The other channel, yeah.
I can link that down below in the description box.
We had talked a little bit before about me getting into this industry. 21 years old, so it's definitely a field where even regardless of gender, you can still be looked down on sometimes, and then adding a female aspect into that usually leads to a lot of condescending tones and things like that. You know, as a small business owner, I think it's especially really important to not only challenge stereotypes, but show the world what you can do.
Speaking of showing the world what you can do, I want to share these before and after pictures of the magic that you worked with my husband's truck. It had been, now my husband doesn't know I'm doing this, okay? But the truck had been sitting outside under the tree for a little while, hauling things back and forth, and he really hasn't had it detailed in forever. So we contacted you, Autumn, about working on his truck, and let me show you the difference. This is the before shot. Oh, I don't think I could have tackled this, but let me show you the after shot. How's that for an amazing job? I'm odd, and I'll say too, I did tell my husband, I made him promise not to park the truck under the tree anymore at all, ever. He's just got to find a different place to park it. But you know, your magic didn't go here. I had a terrible, terrible stain in the front seat. This is older pancake syrup. We just finished a fundraiser. My husband was taking stuff over to a shelter. The lid on the pancake syrup came undone, and boom, that's the result. Now, this is the better result because I tried cleaning it with several things, and this is a lot better than what it was when it first happened, but wow. But I want to show everybody just what you did. This is amazing. These photos here, I mean, you made my husband's 20-year-old truck look almost brand new. It doesn't get better than that. You're a woman small business owner in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, you've got a lot of drive and a lot of determination to do the auto detail work on the cars, on the SUV, truck, so forth. Where does your drive come from? I mean, you get the comments, you get the difficulties, but how do you keep going and get that drive and determination to not just succeed, but to thrive in this kind of environment?
That drive is really what got me to start the business in the first place, you know?
Small businesses everywhere are just really struggling right now. because this is being filmed and we're in the middle of this pandemic that we've got going on. So small businesses are just being hit. And so you've got that obstacle. You've got the obstacle of being a woman entrepreneur and females having the hard time in this male dominated industry. And you're young. So for any one of those three reasons, people would be looking at you, Autumn, going, what are you doing owning a small business right now? You need to be working on a master's degree in business administration before you even think about that. But yet, here you are, and you are successful in what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that. And even just the recognition, because it is a really tough world to get buy-in when you have several things weighing on you. And, thank God there are, certain things that do help me out as far as making my way in this world goes. Like, the area I live in and the color of my skin. And, but that doesn't negate the fact that there are things that weigh against you when you try to, especially anybody making a name for themselves. I think it's especially easier for people to take a look at me and go, and she's wearing mascara and she's gonna touch my car. And especially other women also have these preconceived notions in their head. And that could even just be coming from a place of ignorance, like, oh, well, I was never taught it, so why would any other woman know how to do this? And those are things that we have to buck against, because, I mean, personally, I think if there's a career out there that you're passionate about and you're aspiring towards, you should be able to do your all and give your best and achieve that no matter who you are. And that's something that gets talked about in my household frequently, especially me and my partner, Jared, talk about the future and having children. And we definitely want to raise children in a world where they're confident in themselves because they haven't been fed any preconceived notions about what they do or can't do because of who they are.
No limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, just to bring some of our listeners up to speed who maybe didn't see the other program on the other channel, you are in East Tennessee you're in a small town, but it's a rural mountain community up here in the Northeast Tennessee mountains, where men are the ones who typically work on the cars, detail the cars, and in an area where women have not been encouraged oftentimes to go out and start a small business unless it's part of being an MLM selling
Mary Kay,
like Mary Kay, Tupperware, Scentsy, what you think of as being MLMs.
Yeah.
So, and we're also raised to be polite.
Yeah. And
unless we say bless your heart.
Yes. God love your heart.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've definitely and especially being raised as a woman in a male dominated universe, it's very easy to want to put softeners on your words when you're fighting back as nicely as you can. Like I used to catch myself, in the past, I would make a very well-informed, educated statement. And because the man I was talking to, I felt like he was looking down on me, I would use softeners like, well, I think, or if that makes sense, or I just. And those softeners, because we're taught, be ladylike, be polite, especially this area where it's, very Southern hospitality. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. we're taught that any kind of resistance against a system that holds us down, even in the most minute way, is rude. And I think there are definitely ways to go about that, to take your God-given power back that society stripped away from you in a nice way. We just have to watch how we go about things, because even the way we've been taught to present ourselves as women and speak as women can hold us back.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, I'm a little older than you are, but I know I was taught, and it's still being taught in some households, that a woman should never have as much education or more education than her husband, or even make as much money or more money than her husband, because that leads to marital troubles, which marital troubles lead to marital troubles, not necessarily your income.
I mean, around here, it's not surprising in the least when you hear that people are having marital issues because the woman's making more money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very common reality. I've watched marriages within my own extended family end because of that.
Well, we're taught that, and from a young age, boys are taught that too. You know, you don't want a wife that's your equal, basically, who is going to make the same amount of money as you, or heaven forbid, $6 more.
Yeah, and I mean, and it translates into almost every aspect of your life too. I mean, for instance, I was at the doctor yesterday talking about some general pain and issues I was having, and the word hysterectomy got brought up, and I said, well, you know what? There are enough children in the foster system that you could take it tomorrow and I'd be all right. There are already children that have been had that need a home. And the female doctor looked at me and said, but doesn't your husband want children? And it was no longer about me. It was no longer about the pain I was going through. It was what I could do, what my body could do for somebody else. And she was ultimately, in her words, handing the power to my body over to him. And, you know, I talked to my partner about it afterwards, and I said, that's not fair to you either, because, you know, you don't feel like that. You don't feel like you have control over my body, and why should they make you feel like that too? Put you down like that. You know,
right.
It doesn't help anybody. It's a system that hurts everybody. Especially like boys thinking they can't cry or they shouldn't, and it gets pushed down and turns into anger. And there are a lot of issues that need to be squashed, that make being a woman running a business in this part of the country at this age very difficult. Because, you know, even if someone thinks, oh, everybody should be equal, every single one of us have these preconceived notions in the back of our head, even if it's our first thought and we correct ourselves afterward. Oh, that's wrong. I shouldn't think that. They've still been put in there.
They have been. And you're fighting, in your case, over 20 years of programming. In my case, it's a little more than that. And we just don't want to say that.
Yeah. And thank goodness I've grown up. Yeah, and thank goodness I've grown up in a bit in a more progressive time, because, you know, I've had conversations with my mother when she was a kid. It wasn't socially acceptable to say the word pregnant, you know. The woman was expecting or with child, and
or in a delicate condition.
Yeah, in a delicate condition. It was, pregnant was a dirty word. So, and I mean, I said to my mother yesterday, not only are we in a time where people are fighting against their raising, and, oh, I was taught things were this way my entire life. People are also fighting against the things that they were taught their entire life that are okay now. You know, things that are wrong now and things that are okay now. And there's just been a general switch. And especially for this area, people believe what they believe, and that gets passed on to their children. And it's very easy, especially in these rural mountain communities where no one really ever has the desire to leave, to just stay in this mindset and just stay in an era that doesn't exist anymore, that the rest of the country is past in some senses.
Some ways.
In some ways.
We're still working on it in terms of being a female business owner.
Yeah, but I mean, you get very used to people talking down on you, and just, as a woman, it's something you don't even really recognize after a while. You brush it off. You don't realize that you should be talked to any other way at a certain point until, something happens that makes you go, wait. And that happens a lot when, there are probably plenty of women that are going to be tuning into this that have taken their car to get an oil change by themselves. And what kind of a process that can be. Whereas if, your husband or your boyfriend or any other man in your life that you're close with that you can relate the experience with, they're going to have a totally different experience.
Right. And I shared with you on the phone, I've got a PT Cruiser. I love this PT Cruiser. It's got 420,000 miles on it. Original transmission, okay, which I'm told is unheard of, but I try to take care of my car. So I go in and the transmission seal is leaking. I know what's wrong with it. I go in and I take it to this nationally recognized chain, and they look at it. One tech is talking to another tech, and the message gets relayed up front, and I get called, and I have to go down there, and they're like, we've looked at your car and your seals are leaking, and they said it's high mileage and you need a new transmission, and so this is what you're looking at, and we've called around to do me a favor to find a used transmission that they could put in my car. And I'm like, tranny's not slipping. Oh, well, it could start, but it's not. But you could be stuck out on the road. I mean, look at it. They're saying it's high mileage, and he had not looked at the paper to see how many miles are on the car. He just heard the words high mileage. So automatically he's thinking, well, it's in worse shape than she thinks it is. And she must not be taking care of it because the seals are leaking, which happens. It's a 2005 PT Cruiser. It's 2020. So you have a 15-year-old car. Everybody that's listening, I want you to know that if you keep your vehicle for 15 years, at some point, your seals and belts will need to be changed in that 15-year period. In case you didn't know that world, I just thought I'd toss it out there. So we go in, and I'm like, no, because it's not slipping at all. I'm having no problems, except this seal has started leaking. So we have this little conversation. My husband walks up because he wants to know what's going on, and I cease to exist. This whole conversation suddenly is with my husband and myself. And my husband turns around to me and he's like, but is your transmission slipping? I'm like, no. So he turns around to the guy. He says, her transmission's not slipping. So we took it to someplace else that listened to me. They have done the work, and they'll be the ones that continue to do the work. Whereas this other chain lost my business because they couldn't treat me like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not a small business owner in the automotive industry. And as a woman, you've got it on all angles.
Yeah. And I mean, especially attempting to immerse yourself into online communities as a businesswoman, you can get a lot of pushback. especially in like the detailing groups on Facebook.
So you're talking about professional groups. You're still
Mhm.
getting.
Yeah, and some of them, just for having a female name, you won't be accepted into them. Um, there are still issues like that. And you can make posts in the group, and doesn't matter if what you're saying is correct or not. Someone's gonna question it, try and make you feel like you're stupid. But thankfully, I've found a few that are really inclusive of everybody. I've actually had some people message me saying, "Hey, you're pretty knowledgeable. Could you help me out? Could you give me some advice?" I tried asking in the group, and it was horrible, And so especially in the automotive industry, there are a lot of I would call them purists. Um, very picky about what's said as far as products, terminology, tools. They're going to have an issue with anything. And as soon as they see a female name or profile picture, that's amplified by a lot. And it can make it really difficult, especially if you're just starting out and you're like, well, I want to get other people's opinions on things. I want to ask people about their experiences. I want to know. And getting that pushback a lot of the times is what I think discourages a lot of women from pursuing things like that, because they go, oh, well, this is just how it is. It's never going to get any better. I might as well not even put the time or effort into it because no one's going to take me seriously. And those are serious questions and doubts that I had floating through my head before starting the business. Several times I sat down and cried and was like, no one's going to take me seriously. And ultimately, I just had to decide that I'm good at what I do and I know what I'm talking about, and I take me seriously. And if I don't have confidence in myself, I don't think anyone else should either.
And I think that's a good point. Actually, several good points there. The coming to terms with being solid about who you are and what you want to achieve, despite the naysayers.
Yeah, because I mean, you're gonna get so much pushback, and even if it comes off as, a lot of it comes off as well intentioned, people trying to help. But once you've been in it and you know what you're talking about, you don't need anybody to help. And so it really becomes disrespectful when it's being passed off as trying to be helpful, but at the same time, which one of us is the professional?
Yeah. We're real good at that in the South, having someone try to step in and rescue us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if anytime, guarantee, anytime I pull off on the side of the road and turn my blinker on and get out of the vehicle for anything, someone stops.
And
And
sometimes they're just trying to be nice. But I was
yeah.
thinking, we go into a business and we have a hard time, like me with the auto place about my car. My husband stepped up because he wanted to see what was wrong. But there are plenty of people who would have approached me a little differently and I've had it happen, and try to intervene, basically to kind of protect me as a woman who was getting somebody mad at me because I dared to question their judgment.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've experienced this. You're stopped on the side of the road and somebody stops to help and you say, "No, I'm fine." And it immediately becomes apparent that that is not a good enough answer.
Right.
Because you don't know what you're talking about. Your car stopped on the side of the road, something's wrong. How could you possibly get your way out of this sticky situation without a man? and it's really funny because I've experienced that almost every time I've stopped somewhere since I started driving. And I moved out on my own at 18. I got a full-time job less than a month after turning 18, as soon as I could get one, and 3 months later moved out. And a fella I was working with got a flat tire, and he was living with 4 other men in a pretty large, like, townhouse style apartment. They were all splitting rent, and not a single one of them knew how to change the tire. So he called me, and I knew how to change the tire, and I went down there and changed the flat for him, and, educate. He didn't know that you shouldn't go above 55 on a donut. He had no idea. And so, that it's even,
But did they
it
listen
makes it
to you
even
when you got there?
well, it was just the owner of the car. The other 4 guys were not involved. I think they might have
Okay.
been embarrassed, but it was his car, so he stood out there and watched, and I told him, and but that's what makes it so funny when you run across those situations where you're like, no, I'm good, and they're just absolutely persistent that you're not, and they have to help. And I think that ties right back into what we were talking about earlier with the gender roles and men being like, oh, I have to be the fixer and the provider because that's what's been told to them. And if a woman does something inherently manly better than them, a lot of the times that's gonna hurt. It's gonna emasculate them, whether they mean any harm in that or not.
And it is dangerous for a woman to be on the road stuck because you never know. And statistically, that's a really difficult time to be a woman. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a couple things I carry with me just in case. I have an alarm on my keychain. It's a She's Birdie alarm, and it flashes a strobe light and does an incredibly high-pitched alarm, like ear busting.
They'll get somebody's attention, it sounds like.
Yeah, and then we also Jared picked up, and we got them in yesterday, some stun guns to carry with us.
And those are not legal everywhere. You have to be careful.
Yeah, that's correct. You need to check
those.
your state laws. Thankfully, they are legal in Tennessee.
Now, I even talked to a woman who takes those. She happens to be a realtor, and she feels like she has to carry something for protection along that line. And as women, we should be respected enough that we shouldn't feel like we have to.
Yeah. I mean, there's always the constant struggle as a woman to want to prove yourself. Even if it's something you've been doing for years, you have the drive to prove yourself because we get so used to everyone telling us we can't. And that can either make or break a person if they give into that and believe it. And I want more for future generations. I'm grateful enough to have grown up in a time where, yes, it's still happening, but we can recognize what it is.
I'm glad you have that too. And when I look through the generations, there have been a lot of strong women who have stood up and made their way and kind of paved the road, helped pave the road for me and for future generations such as yourself. And you're going to be paving it by being a small business owner right now. You're going to be paving it for the next generation after you, which is really pretty cool.
I absolutely hope so. Even if I only am able to make a difference in the people right around me, as long as I've made some sort of difference and impact on the world, I'll be satisfied with that.
I think you're there. And I want to pick up on something that you said a little while ago, because I think the message kind of got hidden a little bit. And that is, you talked about going into the internet forums. So it sounds like part of the way that you're overcoming the obstacle of not having people take you seriously is to seek out people who do.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, a support system, in whenever you're facing any sort of oppression, having a strong support system is going to make all the difference. And so I thought it was really, really important to try and immerse myself into these communities and join these different groups and find out for myself which ones were safe or not for me to be in. And I was able to weed through them. Granted, I'm only in 2 or 3 now, but
depending on the
it
size of the
matters.
group, that 2 or 3 could be exactly what you need.
Right. Yeah. And then the internet is just an absolute wealth of information. Anything I want to know is at my fingertips. But when you're in a position where there's a certain something that needs to be done to paint, or you've tried 5 different products and haven't found the right one yet, you really need one-on-one interaction with people that have been through it to figure it out. And you can't always get that from a Google search.
Very true. I mean, sometimes you just have a question. That, yeah, YouTube videos are great, but they'll only get you so far.
Yeah. And I mean, YouTube is an excellent source of information for techniques, how to correct things, how to, but as far as products goes, a lot of the big YouTubers that actually do have the correct information are only going to be pushing one certain brand or the other, whichever one they have affiliate links with. They have to make their money somehow. I'm sure you understand the struggles with YouTube and AdSense.
Oh, yeah.
And how
Well,
horrible
this
that
channel isn't monetized at all.
Yeah.
We're not big enough. We haven't grown enough, because with YouTube, and I very much look at YouTube, I'm treating it like a small business, because that's what you have to do to have a successful channel. And so this one, you have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time. And you can't have one box or the other. So you got to check them both.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great thing, but it's not a monetized channel. So I have Amazon links. I can, monetize it through that. And I have Patreon and PayPal. But yeah, you've got to make your money somehow, because there's always bills.
Right. And, that's well and good. But if you're needing a specific type of product, you can really only go to YouTube for, like I said, the techniques, the information on, what to do on one certain type of material and not the other.
Right.
But as far as your products go, those things like those Facebook groups, subreddits, things like that are really, really vital, especially if it's an industry where it's not super common knowledge, which I think this one really is, just because there are so many ins and outs of different vehicles and different carpets and different, it varies so much. You really have to have an arsenal of different stuff and some sort of source of information, or you can flop if you're not doing the right thing for your customer's vehicle.
But some of the information that you need is business oriented.
Yeah.
I talked to a woman the other day, and she's running her business and very happy to have the business. And then she said that one of the nice things about it is that her husband keeps all the books. So the checking account actually is in his name, she said, for the business. So she doesn't know like what bills are being paid, what bills there are, but yet she says she's the one that's running a business. Now, do you see that? She was closer to my age. Do you see that in your generation?
No. Especially
I was kind of horrified.
yeah, that's a really scary thought for me. Now, I mean, I can kind of see where she's coming from because my mother and father ran a construction business together, and my mother did the bookkeeping. She wrote up all the contracts. She did the taxes, etc. But they had their business account. She kept track of, I mean, but it's not like he was completely uninvolved. He was
Right.
getting the estimates. We're spending this much on this much is for labor, this much is for material. And they were both in on it together. So I can kind of that works out. But
it sounds like that was more of a partnership than what she was alluding to.
Right. As far as, if it's your business, you need to be on top of what's going on with it. And I don't really see that happening so much in my generation, just because one, especially the political climate amongst people my age, not trusting other people with their finances. And two, there are now so many resources available for small business owners, like Square Reader, and you can use Google Docs for your estimates and invoices, and you really have so many tools and applications to help you keep everything in one place. It's really not a struggle at all to manage a small business yourself, just on the computer or on the phone. As long as you understand what you're doing. If you're someone who has no concept of finances or taxes, or applying for employee ID numbers like EINs, and using your social security number for your business, then that's something that is probably not going to last very long. You need to absolutely be up to date on what's going on with your business and what's going on in the world around you that's going to affect your business.
And that's where doing your research in these forums and such helps. Yeah. But it also sounds like you've seen equal roles with your parents taking, on their business. Do you have any suggestions for women who may be struggling with finding their local support group, their network, or their tribe?
If you are struggling to find a local network or support group, start one. If you're not seeing a change around you that you want to see, be the one to do it. Reach out to people. Find local groups on Facebook like you did, and I got a hold of you. And that's how we got in touch, is the group on Facebook. And, reach out to people, start stuff. I say all the time, the only way to get yourself out there is to put yourself out there. You have to be the one to do it. You gotta move your feet. If you are really needing this support group, reach out to people, make your own Facebook page. Find a community center that you can rent on the weekend for $15 a month and hold socially distanced meetings for your group and talk to people.
Yeah, that's something we were talking about on the phone. There doesn't seem to be a women's business group.
Mm-hmm.
There's a women's social group that helps, with food and clothing and some other needs there, but that's kind of been a more traditional role. And there's nothing for women in business yet.
I would absolutely love to start something like that. I did have concerns about
careful what you say.
juggling my time and managing something, because I have so much trouble keeping up with my regular social medias, it seems like, unless I'm flipping through Facebook if I have a second. And even I'm kind of bad at checking my emails sometimes. I'll usually check them in the evenings, but it's not something I'm super on top of every day. So I think especially in this area, that's something we really need. I just think it would be nice to like maybe reach out and find several people that want to go in and start it together. That way it's
I
just,
agree.
yeah, that way it's evenly split. People aren't like completely tied up in their lives trying to get this group together, but it can still be managed, you know.
Yeah, and there's strength in numbers. You have more support. You have a larger tribe, a larger community built around the idea that women can be successful in business.
Yeah, and at the same time, a lot of those pages I've seen can be helpful, but at the same time, a lot of them aren't very because they're exclusive to women that are already in business. If I were to start something around here, I would want it to be open to anyone who's interested, even interested in getting into business. That way they have a support group, people who can share their experiences and tips and tricks on even getting started. Because a lot of people, you know, the idea of starting your own business and everything that goes into it, especially concerning like taxes and things like that, is absolutely terrifying. And I think if people had a place where they could open up about those concerns and get advice without being judged or talked down to, that would be awesome. We would probably see major business growth in this area. But, you know, the women around here have mostly been pushed down their entire lives and don't realize they're capable of more. You know, and it's really, really sad. I want everyone to fully be aware of how important they are to this world and what they can do, you know?
Let me ask this. You somewhere got the idea that you could own a business and that you could be successful despite all of the negative pressure that would have stopped you. And I mean, just to have a small business right now that you're successful in the middle of what we're going through as a world and nation, come on. So tell me, how old do you think you were when you started getting the message that you could achieve?
You're probably not going to believe me, but when I was 10 years old, we lived about a mile and a half, 2 miles down the road from just your regular corner store. And I was living in the mountains in Virginia, pretty close to Kentucky, and it's a very, very rural community. My mom grew up there her entire life, moved away, got married, had kids, and then we moved back for her to be closer to family. And
that's common, especially in the South.
yeah, and so I started making my own flyers, offering to do yard work for people. I wanted to mow yards and weed eat, and I knew how. And so I was like, well, this is a way for me to make some extra money. So every week I would have my mom take me down to the store, and I would put up a new flyer, and someone kept taking them down. But until we moved away,
Oh
I went pretty frequently and hung up flyers and would even, you know, like walk up and down the road and stop and talk to people if I saw them out in their yard. But I've always I've always had a very strong work ethic. And I've always had the desire to get myself out there and make a name for myself and be independent and self-sufficient. And even in the midst of the pandemic, you know, there have been a few things that have set me back and made me question, you know, who I am as a person. Like me and my boyfriend have moved 4 times this year, had to move back in with my parents this last time. And I was like, well, oh no, am I really a real adult making on my own if I got to move back in with mom and dad? Sure. You know,
but
things
you got
happen.
downsized from your job too
Yeah.
before
Well,
you started.
that's correct. Well, I was actually with Census, and well, I got the census. Excuse me. I was laid off from my job pre-pandemic. So I was already unemployed and looking for work and having a horrible time finding a job. I was going to interviews and nothing was clicking.
Right.
The chemistry wasn't right between me and the employer. Whatever the case may have been, even if I was qualified, nothing was working out. And so right around January, before we really knew that, like, oh, there's a pandemic over here, at the time, what we knew is that, oh, it's in China and it's pretty bad, but they've kind of got it under control and people are wearing masks, is kind of what we knew.
Right.
And so I got a job with Census in January, and then they postponed it till March, the training, and then postponed it till April, and then postponed it till August. And so July was coming up, and I'd already been hired on, done my background check, all of that. Training class is coming up. All right, are we going to be doing a virtual training class? No word on it. I was emailing them, even called the office, and the guy got really upset with me and yelled at me. He yelled at me over the phone at the Knoxville office, and said, when I know something, I'll tell you. And I was like, okay. So, because they kept passing the dates on when they said training would start and weren't sending emails. No one knew anything. The other people that worked for Census were contacting me saying, hey, you work for Census, do you know anything? No. So
calling around trying to get the answers.
So
even Census is a temporary job.
Yeah, but it was still going to be some money in my pocket, and so I was like, you know, I can just drive. I won't even have to go into the residence. I can stand on the porch, get people's information. It'll be fine. But they finally sent the email in August about the upcoming training class, and it was going to be in person, in classroom, for all the enumerators in the county, and masks weren't required. And I was like, I can't continue with this in good conscience. I just absolutely can't. And it was even a little bit hairy last week because I was exposed doing everything I could, and thank God that test came back negative.
Yeah, and because you were exposed to the COVID. Now, just to clarify for people who will watch this, Tennessee, our governor, has never mandated masks. He did create an order that allowed local governments, if they chose, to implement masks, but that was never required.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go into positive versus negative and should we or shouldn't we, because the show is about being a small business owner.
Yeah. But just to clear the air there, nothing's ever been required or enforced around here. But I'm absolutely taking every precaution I can.
Good.
I know people are a little bit into making fun of the cloth mask over the N95, but hey, how much safer can you get?
Well, but you need to wear a mask anyway because of the type of work you do, auto detailing.
Yeah, and
so that comes with it.
Sorry, I thought my dog was throwing up for a second. He's just sneezing. No. He's reverse sneezing, but I had the headphones on, so I was like, oh no.
What kind do you have?
He is a Beagle Husky Mountain Dog mix.
Oh.
He's a very vocal boy.
that's I had a Husky mix for 13 years. He passed away in March. He was my service dog, and the vocalization it's just part of it.
Yeah.
They think they talk. So
yes.
But, one of the things that impresses me is not only are you going into this male-dominated field at like the worst possible time to go into a small business, but you're doing it well, and you took this bad thing about being downsized from your job or let go from your job or downsized. And you did the census, had that opportunity, but yet in the middle of this, you saw a greater opportunity to step out on your own and become a business owner.
Yeah, and for, I mean, it doesn't, looking back on it, it doesn't necessarily feel like I did as much work as I did, if that makes sense. I know I've been on top of it almost constantly, but it really just feels like, because it feels like this is what was meant to be, and so everything's kind of just falling together.
All in place.
The work doesn't really feel like work, because it feels like just, what I need to do, I guess. And I can think back to 3 months ago at the beginning of August, and I felt hopeless. I was getting up every day and looking in the mirror, and it felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what day it was anymore. I couldn't keep up with it. And, that quarantine depression really, really started to set in. And it really wasn't until, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, but my dad raised his voice at me, because I was crying and down on myself, and, oh, people aren't going to take me seriously. I want to do this. I think I want to do this, but I don't know. And he raised his voice at me, and he was like, if you're going to do it, you need to just do it. No down on yourself stuff. You need to just, if you're going to do it, put 100% into it and get it done. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Sorry. What?
He knew what button to push to support you.
Yeah.
And you said your dad didn't typically yell at you for things necessarily, and then here
it wasn't really
go and do.
Yeah, it wasn't really yelling, but it was stern, and it was loud enough to snap me out of the pit I was in, and I'm really grateful to have a support system like that.
But it sounds like at the age of 10, you were already starting your business. Creating. How do you market a business? You create flyers. I can't talk today. You create flyers. You talk to people. You put your signage up, even if it gets taken down. And you tell people what you're doing. And you mentioned yards, so you go out and take care of yards. That is, I don't care if you were 10, that's small business mindset.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a lot like my dad. I'm pretty much my dad's mini-me. And he's very, he has a very business mindset. Everything he looks at and sees is a venture. It could be something, and he tries to find a way to make a living out of anything. He started he's doing construction right now, but he's trying to make like hang up lights out of empty liquor bottles and stuff, and trying to do that as a hobby and seeing if he could sell it. And he's the epitome of turn trash into treasure. He has been my entire life, with the mindset he instilled in us. No matter what you're given, try and find a way to make it better and work for you, and
that sounds like it's been very inspiring.
Yeah. And so actually when
cool.
When I know we mentioned I all that scary exposure stuff, but I was actually working with him painting a barn first when that happened. So
and that's not something that women often get to do, is go out on a job site and paint a barn.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we tend to put flowers on them, and we'll go through and we'll decorate, or we'll create a quilt square to put on the barn, but to go out and actually paint a barn that has to be, painted for maintenance. Yeah, we don't get a chance to do that much.
Not a lot, and I think it's not because women don't have the willpower to do it. I think it's just because from a very early age, it's, oh no, don't touch that. You're gonna get hurt. But my mom and dad, I mean, I grew up on a farm, and I was the first baby. They had me, and then they had another girl, and then they had my brother, and he was the youngest. So growing up on the farm, who was the bigger extra helping hand that they needed sometimes? It was me. And so I think my
farm
dad,
is another small business.
yeah, and I think my dad had a lot of, just because of the area he was raised in, had a lot of preconceived notions about women and stuff. But when you got to do it, you got to do it. And when you need a helping hand and the only person around is your wife or your daughter, and they do it,
learn how to do it.
And yeah, so I was raised wholly, I guess you would say, without your normal gender roles. Like my mom and dad were usually cooking dinner together. My dad even taught my mom how to make a few things, and
nice.
And we all got out and worked the fields together and tended to chickens together. I was out in the field 5 or 6 hours one night helping them with a pig giving birth at 13 years old. And I feel like I wouldn't have the drive that I do if I had been raised with traditional gender roles. Oh, you can't do this because you're a girl, or you shouldn't do this because you're a girl. And I think that's really helped me out a lot. And as you can see, I don't think it's made me any less feminine or anything. I'm still very much a woman, and I like putting on my makeup and getting dressed up, and I have my high heels, but I can definitely do anything a man can do.
And it sounds like it's important to be taught that from a young age.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like, my mom is the same way. She grew up on a farm. Her dad was a coal miner. And so I was really, I wasn't the first generation to be.
So you have a strong mother who could mentor you and a strong father, and it sounds like they were both very supportive of you. If they're helping you make flyers when you're 10 years old, I guess that was your first male-dominated field, because who's doing landscaping? Who's mowing the yards?
Yeah, because I mean, I remember, and I don't know, thinking back on it, I don't know how it didn't discourage me. Because when I would walk up to, people in their yards and mention it, me 10, 11 years old, they would literally laugh in my face. And
well, could the part about you're not old enough to use a lawnmower possibly have factored into that?
It could have, but I mean, I was helping my dad on the tractor at that age, so lawnmower was like, I was.
And now that's a thing that people who are listening who do not farm will not understand, and that is, you'll be on a tractor at 8, 9, and 10, and you'll be driving it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're the one picking up the hay bales. A lot of the time, 4 or 5 years old on the parent's knee, and they're having you steer.
Yeah,
that's very common.
4 or 5, and then you have it, 8, 9, or 10. So, yes, very definitely, and more of the can-do mindset.
Yeah, and so I mean, especially knowing that, because I mean, it wasn't uncommon for dads to be taking their sons at 4 or 5 years old around on the tractor, or taking them hunting, or what have you. So I knew at that age that it wasn't the thought in their head that I couldn't do it because of my age. I knew what it really was. But I really don't know how that didn't discourage me. But I remember just being like, on to the next house.
Good for you. And you mentioned hunting, and that's something that a lot of women are very much
Oh, yeah.
discouraged from doing.
Yeah, that's true. There are plenty of women that have no idea how to even use a firearm. And if that's your thing and you're cool with not using firearms, cool. But I know, especially around here, there are plenty of women who would love to utilize, the firearms and go out to the range and shoot, or go hunting to put some deer meat in the freezer for their family for the
And
winter, and
we
don't know
also have,
how.
yeah, and we also have to be cognizant of things like coyotes, bears. These things
Um,
happen where we are.
yeah.
When you're in the mountains, this just happens. So we've got about 3 minutes here to go till the hour. What would you tell a young woman who is looking at being a small business owner in a male-dominated field, like automotive? What would you say to her?
Don't let anybody get you down. There's going to be person after person after person who's going to question you and who's going to talk down to you, and they're going to try and break your spirit because of their horrible beliefs, and you cannot let them, because as soon as you let that spark inside you die, they've won. And I mean, we can't let that happen. We're completely capable of doing anything. I mean, look at everything women have accomplished just in the short little bit since, being awarded back our God-given rights that society took away from us.
You mean like things like voting?
Voting. And yeah, because I mean, it was just, 56, 57 years ago that Black women gained the right to vote. And that's a very bittersweet thing.
That it took so long.
And I was listening to a recording.
A little more bitter than sweet there.
I know we just have a little bit, but nobody can give you back your rights. God already gave you those. They can only say they've taken them away.
So step up to the plate, take your power, and find a way to basically win and get your small business going.
Push through and conquer.
Okay, well, thank you to everyone who has watched this. And I would like to give you the invitation again to click like on the video, because that really helps me out. The more likes that we have, the more shares that we have, the more subscribers that we have, the more YouTube is likely to keep showing these videos in their search engine. So please like, subscribe if you haven't already done so. And we're going to have Autumn's contact information down in the description box below. So click more to find out more. Thank you all for watching, and very many thanks to you for being on here today, Autumn.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed the talks we've had.
Thank you. And y'all keep overcoming those obstacles, and keep coming back to hear more from folks like Autumn who are doing just that. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next stream or video. Bye, y'all.
Bye.